Welcome to our weekly 3-Minute Therapy podcast. I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein. I'm a clinical psychologist and author, and my co-host is Mick Berry, who is a musician and author. And we are experts in REBT, Rational Emotive Behavior Therapy, which is an approach to psychotherapy developed by Albert Ellis many, many years ago and revolutionized the psychotherapy movement. And it's based on rational emotive behavior therapy, which says that it's not situations themselves that cause our emotional and behavioral problems, but rather it's our thinking about situations that cause all our emotions, whether they're emotional problems or not. And that's good news, because if you are acting in self-defeating ways, or if you have disturbed emotions, then you can identify the thinking that's causing that and change your thinking. And when you do that, look for one of the three musts that causes emotional problems. Demand on oneself. I must do well and get approval, or else I'm no good, which leads to anxiety and depression. A demand on others, which takes the form of others must treat me well, or else they're no good. And thirdly, a demand on the conditions of one's life, which takes the form of my life must be fair, easy, and hassle-free, or if it's not, that's awful, and that tends to lead to addictions and procrastination. Mick, did you want to add to that?
No, I think that covers it.
Okay, so what we recommend you do when you have emotional or behavioral problems like anxiety, anger, depression, or addiction, look for your must, look for your should, and question, challenge, and contradict it. And reality is on your side, because there's never evidence that things have to go your way, or things or people must treat you well, or your life must go well, because musts are magical beliefs. Um, Must would only be the case if you ran the universe and everything would have to be the way you want them to be. But since I run the universe, you can't also run the universe. So that's obviously false. Today, we're going to be discussing REBT and goals. And a goal is mainly an intention you have, an aim, or an aspiration for a desired result. And we have goals. Conscious beings have goals. We have a goal to get up in the morning as soon as the alarm goes off, and to go to bed at night when we're tired, or when we're decided it's a good time to go to bed. So we have goals throughout the day. Theodore Roosevelt said, in terms of goals, keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. So you can have lofty goals as long as you don't make it a demand, as long as you don't convince yourself you have to achieve your goal. So you could have a goal to be a great violinist as long as you don't make it a must. And then there's the practical aspect to your goals. What can you do to achieve your goals? And if you want to be a great violinist, it means practice, 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 or to be good at almost anything takes a lot of practice. Now, there are various musts and demands that tend to sabotage your goals. So you may have some of these demands. I must achieve my goal. I must be a great violinist, or else I'm a failure. Others must always support my aspirations, or else they're no good. I must impress others with lofty achievements. All my efforts must go exactly as planned, or it's terrible. I must do it perfectly. So again, it's good to strive to do it perfectly, as long as you don't make it into a must. Mick, did you want to add to that?
Well, I wanted to say a few things about what you said practice, practice, practice. It's important to remember it's the right kind of practice. Unfortunately, if you want to learn to play the violin, there are good ways, there are bad ways to do it. And I'm a drummer, I teach drumming. And I know that there are good ways and bad ways to achieve drumming, so I assume that's the same for violin. And there are also good and bad drum teachers, and there are good and bad violin teachers. So I would say don't just practice, but as much as you can, use your head and try to use your intelligence as much as possible. And this, I think, begins with saying, I don't have to have it work out. This isn't necessarily going to go my way, so I had best be on my toes and evaluate my progress along the way to see. Of course, there are times when you're playing when you just want to forget about as much as you can and just play and enjoy yourself. But it's going about things in an intelligent way, which will help you achieve your goals. And as you mentioned, and I agree with, I think one of the most intelligent ways is to remember that things don't have to go your way. I like thinking of it this way. One of the best ways to avoid an accident is to be aware that one can happen. If you're forgetting that an accident can happen when you're driving, you can space out and then be more prone to make a mistake. If you're aware that while you're driving, an accident can happen, staying away from the thought, I must not get in an accident, then you're going to be more prone to drive safely. And likewise, I want to point out that the more you want something, I've said this before, the more you want something, the greater there is to demand yourself to have it. Now, REBT advocates continue to want something a great deal and practice, 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 not demanding to have it while still wanting to have it a great deal. It's possible to not demand something while wanting it more than you can imagine wanting anything else in life. You still do not have to demand it. And well, I've been talking a lot. I have something else to say, but is there something on your mind?
No, I just wanted to say that uh, one of the things you said that I think is a great point is not only practice, but practice intelligently and smartly.
Yeah, and I was going to say in practicing REBT, because we do advocate practice, practice, practice. But one thing that I had missed, which you pointed out to me over a decade ago, I was making the demand that I must not be irrational. And that is the craziest thought you can have. I was making myself depressed over being depressed. It's very easy if you, and I've seen this with many therapists, I'm such a good therapist, therefore I am rational. Not necessarily. And in fact, I think you'll verify this. Albert Ellis wrote in a book, your chapter, your most, for therapists, your most difficult client, yourself. So in REBT, we advocate practicing and intelligent practicing, and to be more specific so people can practice it intelligently. If REBT is not being effective, it's almost always for one of three reasons. You're missing the demand, or you're not refuting the demand emphatically, therefore you don't really believe that that the demand doesn't exist, or you're creating a secondary disturbance. I must not be anxious about losing my job, in which case you, if you're not addressing that, then you will not be able to feel better. You'll continue to have anxiety. I remember one particular time I actually gave myself the exercise to feel anxiety for one day rather than try to get rid of it. I realized I was telling myself I must not have anxiety. So my homework assignment was be anxious for a day. And I was anxious for a day and I realized, well, I can be anxious. It won't kill me. I'm just anxious. It's uncomfortable. I'd rather not be anxious, but I can certainly be anxious. Even being anxious is not the end of the world. And there went away my secondary disturbance of I must not have anxiety.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with all that, Mick. And also, some of the rational beliefs to work toward is, although I don't like frustration, in trying to achieve this goal. I can stand it. And if I make slow progress, that's not awful, terrible, or horrible. It's just, at worst, disadvantageous. And I refuse to give up. There's giving up because it's hard is not going to help you achieve your goal. And finally, unconditional self-acceptance. Accept yourself unconditionally, whether you do well or poorly. Yeah, Mick?
I was going to say, in terms of playing an instrument, you can pretty much bet that there will be some frustration involved. And REBT advocates developing high frustration tolerance. And what that means is being able to tolerate being frustrated and not telling yourself, I can't stand frustration, but I want a goal. I'm not getting it. I'm frustrated. I want to have the goal. I want to have it. I'm not getting it. I am unhappy about this, but I can stand being unhappy. Now, what can I do to achieve the goal? And it may take, in the case of playing an instrument, may take months to achieve your goal or even longer. But if you're being smart in evaluating what it is you need to do to achieve the goal, then it will most certainly come more easily. And sometimes it requires experimenting. Sometimes we don't know what is going to happen in order to achieve our goal. And intelligence, I think, comes into play there. If we try an experiment and it doesn't work, to admit that it doesn't work rather than to fool ourselves into thinking that it worked. That's where a lot of people can do themselves in. They want a goal so much that they lie to themselves about the experiment working when it didn't work. Honesty with ourselves and evaluating outcomes in reality is what will help us achieve a goal.
Yeah. Also, in terms of more practical suggestions to achieve a goal, one is to get a mentor or someone who has achieved the goal and to mentor you and give you suggestions. Another is to do research on best ways to achieve this goal. And you can use AI also to get some answers about that. Mick?
Well, I was going to say, in terms of finding a mentor, that can be a little tricky because there are lots of charlatans out there. But one of the things REBT does have going for it, if you have anxiety, people, when they're going for a therapist or looking for a mentor, one of the things REBT does have going for it is Albert Ellis revolutionized the field of psychology. Before him, it was all psychoanalysis largely. And because REBT was so effective, it transformed the field of psychology. And in fact, it's very rare when somebody does something as silly as psychoanalysis now. Even when people are not employing REBT, they're still using an Albert Ellis format of telling their problems to the therapist and the therapist working with them to help them overcome whatever problems they have. So he was the first person, I believe, or really the guy who led the way in that format of the client saying what their problems were and the therapist working with them to overcome their problems rather than trying to delve into their past.
Yeah, he was one of the main ones, along with Karen Horney and Alfred Adler, and a few other early comers in the field.
Yeah, and was also going to say that it's the efficacy of REBT that has allowed a blossoming in the field of cognitive behavior therapy. And so, in finding a mentor, what you want to do is look for somebody who has success under his or her belt.
Yeah. Okay, any final words, Mick?
I'll just say one last thing. I've read a book about, it's always good to slam Freud. Read a book called Freud, The Making of an Illusion. And this man who wrote the book cites case after case after case of Freud having no success whatsoever. So that's one more dig at psychoanalysis.
Yeah, his last name was Cruz, Crews.
Yeah, I've got it right here. Frederick Cruz.
Yeah.
Yep, right.
Okay,
Okay.
very good. So uh, I'd like to thank Chris Rossini, our tech engineer, for making this happen. Comment below if you have any thoughts or you'd like to be a guest on our 3 Minute Therapy podcast. Suggest subjects that you'd like us to discuss. From time to time, we get suggestions from our viewers. And again, I'm Dr. Michael Edelstein, author of 3 Minute Therapy, and Mick Berry, expert in rational emotive behavior therapy, and have a goal to subscribe to the our 3 Minute Therapy podcast to do what, Mick?
You stay on the rational side of life and goals.